J.V. Stalin. Blacklegs of the Revolution. October 15, 1917. Source: Works, Volume 3, March to October, 1917. Publisher: Foreign Languages Publishing House, Moscow, 1954. The Soviets and committees must be abolished, said Kaledin the Kornilovite at the Moscow conference amidst the thunderous applause of the cadets. True, replied Tseretelli the compromiser, but it is too early yet, for this scaffolding must not be removed before the edifice of the free revolution, that is, counter-revolution, is completed. This was at the Moscow conference in the beginning of August, when the counter-revolutionary plot of Kornilov and Rodzianko, Miliukov and Kerensky was first taking shape. That plot did not come off, the political strike of the Moscow workers thwarted it. Nevertheless, a coalition of Tseretelli and Miliukov, Kerensky and Kaledin was formed, a coalition against the Bolshevik workers and soldiers. And it turned out that the coalition was merely a screen behind which a real plot against the Soviets and committees, against the revolution and its conquests was taking shape, a plot which came to a head at the end of August. Could the socialist revolutionaries and Mensheviks have known that in praising a coalition with the virile forces of the Moscow conference they were working for the Kornilov conspirators? Could the petty bourgeois liberals of Delo Naroda and the trumpeters of the bourgeoisie of Izvestia have known that in isolating the Bolsheviks and undermining the Soviets and committees they were working for counter-revolution and enrolling as blacklegs of the revolution? The Kornilov revolt exposed all the cards. It exposed the counter-revolutionary nature of the cadets and of the coalition with the cadets. It revealed what a danger the alliance of the cadets and the generals was to the revolution. It convincingly proved that had it not been for the Soviets in the rear and the committees at the front, against which the defensists were plotting with Kaledin, the revolution would have been crushed. We know that in the grave hour of the Kornilov revolt the Mensheviks and socialist revolutionaries had to put themselves under the protection of those very Kronstadt sailors and Bolshevik Soviets and committees against whom they had been forming a coalition with the Kaledins and the other virile forces. The lesson was a valuable one, and certainly impressive. But, the memory of man is short. And particularly short is the memory of the renegades of Izvestia and the spineless Delo Naroda. Only a little more than a month has elapsed since the Kornilov revolt. One would have thought that Kornilovism was dead and done with. But by the will of fate and of Kerensky we have in this short period entered a new phase of Kornilovism. Kornilov is under arrest. But the ringleaders of Kornilovism are in power. The old coalition with the virile forces was disrupted. But instead a new coalition with the Kornilovites has been formed. The Moscow conference did not become the long parliament Cossack Ataman Krylov dreamed of. But in its stead a Kornilov pre-parliament has been constituted with the mission of replacing the old Soviet organization. The first conference of the blacks in Moscow has left the scene. But in its stead a second conference of the blacks opened in Moscow the other day, and its leader, landlord Rodzianko, publicly declares that he would be glad if the Soviets and the Navy perished and Petrograd were captured by the Germans. The government makes a pretense of putting Kornilov on trial. Actually, it is paving the way for Kornilov's advent by conspiring with Kornilov and Kaledin, working for the withdrawal of the revolutionary troops from Petrograd, preparing to flee to Moscow, making ready to surrender Petrograd, and slobbering over our gallant allies, who are looking forward impatiently to the destruction of the Baltic fleet, the capture of Petrograd by the Germans, and the ascension to the throne of Sir Lavr Kornilov. Is it not evident that we are on the eve of a new wave of Kornilovism, one more ominous than the first? Is it not evident that what is required of us now is the utmost vigilance and the fullest readiness for battle? Is it not evident that the Soviets and revolutionary committees are needed now more than ever? Where lies the salvation from Kornilovism? Where is the force of the revolution that is capable of crushing the impending counter-revolutionary assault with the full might of a mass movement? Not in the servile pre-parliament, surely. Is it not evident that salvation lies only in the Soviets and the worker and soldier masses who stand behind them? Is it not evident that the salvation of the revolution from the impending counter-revolution is the mission of the Soviets, and of the Soviets alone? One would think that it was the duty of revolutionaries to cherish and strengthen these organizations, to rally the worker and peasant masses around them, to link them together in regional and all-Russian congresses. But the Izvestia and Delo Naroda turncoats have forgotten the severe ordeal of the Kornilov days and for several days now have been engaged in discrediting and hounding the Soviets, in torpedoing the regional and all-Russian Soviet congresses, in disorganizing and wrecking the Soviets. The role of the local Soviets is declining, says Izvestia. The Soviets have ceased to be organizations of the whole democracy. We want to substitute for the temporary Soviet organization a permanent, all-round and all-embracing organization of the structure of national and local life. When the autocracy fell and with it the whole bureaucratic system, we erected the Soviets of deputies as temporary huts in which the entire democracy could find shelter. Now, in place of the huts, the permanent brick building of the new system is being erected, and naturally people are gradually leaving the huts for the more convenient premises as each story is built. Thus speaks the shameless Izvestia, organ of the Central Executive Committee of the Soviets, which is dragging on its wretched existence owing to the infinite tolerance of the Soviets. And the Lyapkin-Tyapkins of the spineless Delo Naroda. Lyapkin-Tyapkin, a character in Gogol's Inspector General. End of translator's note. Hobble after Izvestia and profoundly opine that the Congress of Soviets must be torpedoed, for in that lies the salvation of the revolution and of the Constituent Assembly. Do you hear? Temporary organization meaning the revolutionary Soviets, which overthrew Tsardom and its tyranny. Permanent and all-embracing organization meaning the Servile Pre-Parliament, which is serving Alexeyev and Kerensky. Temporary huts meaning the revolutionary Soviets, which dispersed Kornilov's detachments. Permanent brick building meaning that Kornilov abortion, the pre-parliament, whose mission it is to cover up the mobilization of counter-revolution with its prating. Here, the hustle and bustle of virile revolutionary activity. There, the decorum and comfort of a counter-revolutionary chancellery. Is it surprising that the Izvestia and Delo Naroda renegades hasten to move from the huts of the Smolny Institute to the brick building of the Winter Palace, thus reducing themselves from the rank of leaders of the revolution to that of orderlies of Sir M.V. Alexeyev? The Soviets must be abolished, says Sir M.V. Alexeyev. Glad to be of service, replies Izvestia. You complete the last story in the brick building of the Winter Palace, and we, meanwhile, will tear down the huts of the Smolny Institute. The Soviets must be replaced by the pre-parliament, says Mr. Dzmov. Glad to be of service, comes the reply from Delo Naroda. Only first let us torpedo the Congress of Soviets. And that is what they are doing now, on the eve of another Kornilov revolt, when the counter-revolutionaries have already convened their Congress in Moscow, and when the Kornilovites have already mobilized their forces and are organizing riots in the rural districts, causing starvation and unemployment in the towns, preparing to torpedo the Constituent Assembly, and openly mustering forces in the rear and at the front for another attack on the revolution. What is that, if not downright betrayal of the revolution and its conquests? What are they, if not despicable blacklegs of the revolution and its organizations? How, after this, should the workers and soldiers organized in the Soviets treat these Izvestia and Delo Naroda gentry if they, in the grave moment of an impending Kornilov revolt, turn to them as of old with the outstretched hand of the beggar, pleading for protection from counter-revolution? Workers, in time of a strike, usually ride blacklegs on a wheelbarrow. Peasants usually put blacklegs of the common cause in the pillory. We do not doubt that the Soviets will find proper means of stigmatizing the contemptible blacklegs of the revolution and its organizations. Rabicki put, number 37, October 15, 1917. End of Blacklegs of the Revolution, by J. V. Stalin.